Hola, Bills Mafia. Bienvenidos a todos. Hoy today, feliz domingo.
Yo, yo,
Vamos a...
yo, yo. Hold on a second. Joe put on translator, John. He was
What?
he tra- Joe had the translator on for Spanish. Hold on one second. Let me turn it off, and you can start again. All right, hold on. All right, go.
What's up with that, Joe? Sabotage. Leave the kids alone and then sabotage them? Woo! Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Bills Mafia, to the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Show. I'm John Fina, your host, alongside of Jerry Ostrowski. Again, it's the Overreaction Sports Show powered by Believe. This week's show, we're basically doing last week's doppelganger. We did the offensive lineups, the roster prediction. This week, we are going to do the defense. Welcome, everyone, to the show. I hope you enjoy this. We'd love to hear your comments. Like or subscribe as soon as you get in, whether you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or X, wherever you are. But if you want to be part of the conversation, jump over to YouTube and let's have some fun. Let's hear what you have to say. We're getting ready very soon for another Bills season. Training camp is so close. You can almost taste it. Even though there's no parking at St. John Fisher this year and you got to take a bus, get your butts over to training camp and cheer on your favorite position group, your favorite players. Be part of the excitement of Bills Mafia. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Like, subscribe. You hate it, you love it, share it. If you're in your car getting ready for work, making dinner, and you're listening to this podcast, please hit the subscribe button. Jerry, welcome to the show. Joe clearly didn't feel confident about his defensive roster predictions, so he's leaving it to you and I. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Just got back from a little hibachi cook. I hadn't had one of those in a long time. I imagine I might be a little. I don't know if you see me squirming in my seat, I might have to run out real quick. But things are going good, man. We have like 85 birthdays on the same day in this family, so we've been celebrating birthdays all weekend long. But I'm ready to dive in, get into this Bills roster on defense. 26 players is what they kept last year. We'll project 26 ourselves.
Wow, that's exciting. Hey, happy birthday season to the Ostrowski family. I know it's always fun watching the kids grow up, but keeps you very, very busy. Jerry, lots to talk about. My notes look like scribble, but, we always say as offensive linemen that the game is won and lost in the trenches. And I want to start there, Jerry. Let's start with the interior. The toughest, biggest, meanest hombres on the team. I'm very interested to hear. And we don't have to go through the starters unless you feel like current starter relates to a backup position vis-a-vis injury, reliability, or what have you.
No, we're not going to go through starters. I think the defensive tackle position is the one that probably has the least amount of mystery to it, right? There's really not anybody on the outside looking in that all of a sudden I think is going to show up and take a spot. They kept 5 last year. I think we're looking in John, unless your list is different than mine. I don't think it would be. But Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Austin Johnson, the free agent from the Las Vegas Chargers, Deshaun Williams, who's a free agent from Carolina, and then our 3rd-round draft pick, Dwayne Carter. I think that makes up our defensive tackle group.
Jerry, I'd love to disagree with you. Keep the show nice and long and keep the group listening in. Welcome, Scott. Welcome to Trek Reviewer, Tracy Victor, FJ Crociata. Thanks for coming and thanks for jumping in. Hop on over to YouTube. I'd love to disagree, whereas I cannot. So yes. I just don't see anybody breaking into those top 5. We great production from the starters last year. I think Dwayne Carter is going to be a great addition. I'm excited to see what Austin Johnson really, brings to the table. We've seen recently some drops in productivity in that inside group. So I think you, like me, are looking for 2 guys who can get the starting 2 a breather and not have a lapse.
No, I think so.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think Brandon Beane did the best job with this position group in the offseason of solidifying some free agents that have some plays under their belt, experience in the league, that are going to come in and do a good job. I thought the Poona Ford experiment was awful last year, almost like he was chasing a check we didn't get much out of him. But I think between Austin Johnson and Williams, I think we've got a pretty good group going with that defensive tackle group. I'm excited to watch them play.
Yeah, terrific. All right, defensive end. Defensive end. The fast guys, the prima donnas, the guys that take 28% of the plays off, the ones that stare into the backfield and don't use a move. Jerry, what's your take?
This is one area that we could have a sticky spot. They kept 5 here last year. I think the 4 that, well, at least the 4 that I think are a given now, and probably one, I don't know, man. You got Greg Rousseau, obviously, trying to work on his pass rush, get it up to speed. I think he's a good pass rusher, but I think he's a better run stopper. He's a true blue combo D end. AJ Epinesa, you're going to see his snaps increase with his increased salary. I think they're really going to rely on him to take up a lot of the bulk of the snaps, especially in first and second down, away from Von Miller. Then you've got Von Miller. I'm not saying he's a guarantee to make the roster. I mean, with the redone contract, do you get him off the books this year instead of waiting for next year? I don't know, but I think they probably reward him for doing that and keep him around on the team. But we'll see what happens there. And then I've got Dwayne Smoot as my 4th, a guy that's got experience in the league that I like. But then here's the sticking point. And I want your opinion on this, John. You got Javon Solomon, the rookie from Troy State, who led the NCAA in sacks, but he's undersized. He is young. He wasn't playing in the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12. Okay, he was playing, you say a G5. So if anybody has a hang up with that, you have that whole aspect. And then you got Kingsley Jonathan, who has ability there as well. So I think that 5th spot kind of is a fight between those two.
So you see the 5th spot between Javon Solomon and Kingsley Jonathan, and you give no credence to Casey Toohill. He's not even part of your conversation.
When I look at that position, I've seen what Toohill has done throughout a 4 or 5 year career. Okay, 7 sacks in 5 seasons. He was with Washington. He was with the Eagles a little bit last year, but didn't even stick the whole season. So if I'm going to put my time and effort into somebody, I'm going to do it to a guy that I drafted, this season, who was the NCAA sack leader this season. And because I look at Toohill and I'm like, I've already kind of seen what he can do. I want to see what these other guys can do, especially, and same thing with Kingsley Jonathan. I think he's probably got more upside than Toohill as well.
But, and here's where I will challenge you a little bit. I look at Toohill as a little bit like our great friend and former colleague from North Dakota, Phil Hansen, right? So, if you're looking for somebody that can rest Rousseau or Smoot and play the run and have a durability there for setting the edge, does that not change your thinking at all? Because I don't see Kingsley Jonathan or Javon Solomon filling that role.
I don't. If Toohill was the next Phil Hansen, he wouldn't be on 3 teams in 5 seasons. I think what you see is what you get with him. Now, obviously, you've got some other guys. You had Cameron Klein, who was a little bit with the Colts. You got a couple of rookies there, and both Royd, and then you've also got Ugbawu. Ugwuba. So you've got other guys there as well that could be practice squad type guys. But if I'm going to put my time and effort in somebody, it's going to be a guy that I evaluated, that I cherish enough to move around in the draft. And I think that's the biggest thing with Solomon we got to look at. The Bills used some draft capital, did some things to get to that place to get him. And then the other thing that I like about him is he is a big man special teamer, I think he'll be. He's a little bit undersized at the end, but he is a big special teamer, can do a lot of things for the Bills on that side of the ball as well. So if I look at that group, I probably give Solomon the nod, but I think that Jonathan is a guy that can compete for it. And if he doesn't get it, probably goes to the practice squad.
So, no disrespect. I was just pushing you, but we agreed from the get-go. Yeah, I do have Javon Solomon making the roster. Kingsley Jonathan hopefully get to the practice squad. I didn't have Casey Toohill making the roster. So that rounds it out. The question in the comments was how many? 5. We decided we are going to take 5 defensive ends.
They kept 5 last year. They had 5 D ends, 5 D tackles. So
we're
kind of basing our picks off of what they did last season.
All right, stepping up in numbers, the next level, Jerry. We know you have to block level 1 first, but level 2, becomes super important. These guys are incredible athletes, right? They've got to play two roles. They got to fill like Ray Lewis, and they got to run like a deer like Terrell Bernard. So when we're talking about linebackers, Jerry, give me your take. I struggled with this position a little bit, but I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. The starting group, as it stands on ESPN, Buffalo Bills depth chart, is Morrow, Milano, and Terrell Bernard.
When I'm going to do and Thursday for the Big O show, you just said something to guys. I'm going to do a little Terrell Bernard comparison with Edmonds, who's now in Chicago. I'm going to cover those two and just kind of look at production just off of one season and what Bernard has done as compared to multiple years with Edmonds. So we're going to talk about that Thursday. But I look at this group, obviously Milano, question mark, is he full speed? I think he probably is. They're easing him back into things. If he's not, and they've got the governor on him from the start, then I get really nervous. But I think he'll be fine. You got Terrell Bernard, who obviously huge presence last year, put the green sticker on his helmet, was a huge leader for this Bills team, made huge splash plays all over the place. Then you got the second-year player in Dorian Williams, who's also a special teams bandit and a guy that's probably more experienced now with a year under his belt. I expect him to be a little bit more calm, a little bit more productive. Now, here's where it gets sticky, John. You know, I've got those three as locks, and then my next three, I've got Deion Jones, the former Atlanta player who was hugely productive in the league and now is kind of rounding out his career. Right now, I got Nicholas Morrow, who was with some teams. He was a little bit with the Eagles last year before.
You have Dorian Williams starting in front of Morrow.
Yeah, right. Well, that's it. They're not going to start three linebackers.
Well, that's fair. Okay, that is
They're
fair.
going to start two. Because you got the nickel safety. So
right. Well, we're keeping six though. We're keeping six.
Right, we're keeping six. And I look at Williams as the prime backup to Matt Milano. I still don't think he's experienced enough to play Mike, but I think that's why they went and got Jones. I think that's your prototypical Mike. Then you got Nicholas Morrow, who could probably play Mike and Will. When I say Will, I mean more your Milano type position. And then you got the rookie out of I believe Washington.
Right.
From Edifon Olafascio, who I think will be a guy that gets a ton of time on teams like Solomon from that defensive end group. Those are my six right now. I don't have Spector making it. Obviously, the local guy, Anderson, I don't have him or Shane Simon. But this is where this group could get a little bit changed or iffy. Somebody gets released. Do they bring that guy in and release somebody off this group? Or is this a group where they say Williams can play multiple roles? We can afford to have 5 instead of 6 if I want to keep somebody else at a different spot. That's the thing to me that I don't know about not being in that room. Are they hard set on these 5, 5, 6, 10 numbers? Or do they give themselves a little bit of, leeway with where they keep a guy or don't keep a guy? So right now, that's my 6. I would say that if one of those guys off that list was moved, I would, in my opinion, John, I want your opinion, I think it would be Nicholas Morrow, just because of knowing he was with Philadelphia last year and they needed linebackers and they released him before the end of the season. So that's why I look at that.
Right. I hear what you're saying. And I agree in part. I think this is the most confusing room to forecast, the linebacker room. Only because, there's age issues, there's injury issues. I know you don't like Spector because of injury. I think they like him when he's healthy, but, opportunity and availability have to meet, right? And that's a big question mark. And you seem to have no issue with Olafascio being a rookie and being the 6th guy. And I'm actually pretty good with that. And I really fought with this on Balin Spector, right? Because I wasn't sure who number 6 would be. So, you've got me convinced. I wasn't taking into consideration the injury issue, and I think it's Olafascio, honestly.
And we talked a little bit off air, and I think you bring up a great point. Spector is a special teams guy too. He's got a lot of reps under his belt on teams. other than the injury issue, he's been productive in that area. And then, of course, filled in last year when we were playing like linebacker number 13, 14, and 15 sometimes due to injury. That was facetious, but also kind of true. But the thing is, you brought up a great point with the kickoff return, the kickoff and kickoff return.
I was
rules
just about to ask you
changing.
that.
With
Right.
those changing, the way they're changing, does that change the way we think about special teams guys and backups?
So you hit the nail on the head. Joe and I were talking about this last week, and until we have a firm understanding, and I'm sure they know what they're going to do, what their strategy is going to be on kick return and kickoff coverage with the new, I guess, style.
Right.
I think it does. It was such a short space. You're looking for guys who are better tacklers, maybe not as fast, right? You want to be able to get guys that can work really well in tight spaces. That screams linebacker to me.
Right. Right. So there you go. You keep your 6 because you need the linebacker type. And
Right.
see, I think Javon Solomon, even though he is a defensive end, is there's probably quite a few linebackers in this league that are as big or bigger than he is.
I agree. I think that his value for making this roster is going to have to be the kicking game and the fact that he's, potentially a flex kind of guy. Right. I'm a defensive end, but if I can work well in space, then I'm much more value in the kick. I have much more value in the kicking game. And that gives, what do we always say? Give them a reason not to cut you. Right. Be indispensable. And I think that's where he is going to have to shine. It's good stuff, Jerry. I love your insight. I try to take a lot of consideration into where guys play, right? We talk about Power 5, we talk about Group of 5, we talk about the FCS, and you look at programs and their quality, and I'm always looking back and say, well, all right, is the MAC tougher than the Mountain West? And do I want to take a guy because he's out of a great program, even though he's from the Group of 5? All of those things come into consideration because when it comes to rookies, it's, you're just like, all right, well, what is our real risk here? In the event of injury, we got to get this guy in and get some reps, and they got to grow up fast, right? And you're looking for maturity level, things that we can't see, that only they can see in the meeting rooms. When they're talking, through the playbook, does the guy have the answers? Does he line up properly in practice? Is he on time? Is he dedicated? Is he making all the right decisions? And all of that builds up for the character and how they're going to be a contributor, I think. Right.
Right. No, exactly. And I think you have to look at the Bills in this situation where we're talking about these rookies. I mean, this is a team that is in a bit of a salary cap purge, right? We've called it a kind of a soft rebuild all offseason here on Overreaction Buffalo, and I believe that. So if you're going to go out and spend this time and do what Brandon Beane did, which was move out of round 1, obtain picks, slide down, obtain more picks, not only for this year but for next year, you're going to rely on these. These are your, I don't want to say cornerstone guys, but these are your depth pieces for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And you got to make sure you try to develop these guys and keep them around. Like Olafacio, I've seen him play in person, slasher type guy, makes a lot of plays, runs stuff down. He's not tremendously big. He's not a huge take on a guard type guy, but he is an athlete. He makes plays. I think he'll fit in well. We talked about Solomon. Can he, let's face facts. Solomon was brought in for one reason and one reason only: increase sack numbers by that defense. And if he can't do it, then you probably move on quicker from him than you say you would a guy like Olafacio or Van Granger or some of these other guys that have maybe a little more pedigree. So no, I think it's a big deal. You got to get these guys going, and the best way to get these guys reps, because we all know, John, our coaching staff does not like to throw rookies in there like Andy Reid and the Chiefs do. I mean, it's day one with them. They throw you in there, sink or swim. You're going to go ahead and learn by mistake, and you're going to learn under fire. They like to bring their guys along slowly. So how do you get them more reps in a game? You get them on special teams.
That's right. And that's right. You're constantly, I think, at that level that Brandon and McDermott are at. You've got to say, well, we can't always shop for the next guy. Right. We've got to develop our own talent. And then you got to look to your your scouting room and say, those guys get
Right.
graded too, right?
Right.
I mean, they got to go in for an annual business review and substantiate the grades they give players. And I'm sure some of those scouts are saying we should have drafted this guy that the Chargers drafted or the Cowboys drafted, and now look at him, right?
Right.
Just you got to substantiate your job, and it's always hard even as a former player. Remember when a guy came into the locker room and you're like, who the hell is this guy? Right? Where did he come from? And you're like, whatever, throw the plastic on, pull on your bucket, and let's go. Show us what you
Right.
got. So show
Right.
us what you got, Jerry. The cornerbacks and the safeties. This is this is an interesting room. I had a couple of challenges. We're talking about keeping 6 cornerbacks, and that's what they did last year. And frankly, with some of the injuries we had, that's not a bad idea. And 4 safeties, so we're at 10. Let's start with the cornerbacks and the safeties, and then you and I'll talk through the discussion we had earlier, which is a little bit of the holy cow, how are we going to account for this? So let's go with the corners.
Right. This is where it really gets. This is perfection, the old perfection game, right? Trying to get all the pieces in the right spots.
Right.
This was the most confusing to me because, again, I don't know how this coaching staff or personnel department is going to put this group together. Last year, they had 6 corners, 4 safeties, okay? If you look at the guys that are definites, John, you and I both agree on these names. We both agree on Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, Taron Johnson, possibly the best nickel corner in the league, and Kaiir Elam. Now, Elam is a guy, again, like Von Miller. I would not be shocked if by the end of training camp, Von was moved. If he's not getting it done, let's take the hit now and not have to worry about it next year or a lesser hit next season. I'm not saying he is. He's probably going to be there, but I'm just saying I would not be shocked. Elam's another guy. If, we heard last year he had the ankle injury, that's what held him back. If he's healthy and he's still struggling, this is a former first-round guy that some other organization would definitely take a chance on to bring into a defensive philosophy that maybe fits more of his, up in your chest man coverage style that he likes to play. Could he be moved? But right now I have him in that room. So those are my 4. Now, where does Cam Lewis fit? Okay. The Trek reviewer says he thinks Cam Lewis is gone. I do not. The reason I do not, I think Cam Lewis is Taron Johnson's backup as the nickel corner. He also correlates and fits in the safety room. So there's the guy that, how does that fit, right? My next 2 guys that I want to talk to you about and kind of get your feelings on them on the cornerback side before we dig into the safety side is Jamarcus Ingram, the undrafted free agent that has done a lot of things kind of all over the place this offseason and workouts and things like that, trying to bring him along. And then you got Taquan Hardy, the draft pick from Penn State, who is also a big-time kick returner, an area that we don't have a lot of kick return guys at. So how does he fit into the equation? So Ingram and Hardy are my 2 iffy guys. You had a couple other names that you liked as well, John.
Yeah, well, and again, for those listening in right now, Jerry brought it up, right? That the kick return, the punt return position is what really throws a monkey wrench into this discussion, right? Because outside of Khalil Shakir returning punts, who do we have? Now, I'm not so concerned about kickoff return. I mean, how far is that kick actually going to be? Like
Right.
28 yards? I think I could
Right.
kick it that far. Left-footed though, because my right knee is kind of in trouble. But so you're looking at punt returns, in my opinion. I got to tell you, I mean, I look at Kenny H. Lovely out of the MAC, and he's a fair size guy. What I like about him, and tell me where my thought process is off, Jerry. I want to be able to cover that nickel position more deeply than I'm worried about the safety position. So for me, I look at this roster as 6 corners and 4 safeties, but I got to have one of those safeties be capable to play corner, right? So they currently have They have D. Delaney, right? 4-year guy out of Miami at a cornerback position, at the safety position, but historically has played corner.
Yeah.
So and by the way, I'm with you. I think we talked earlier. I don't know that DeMar Hamlin makes this football team.
Right. And that's where it's going to get, as Dave Grohl likes to say, I don't want to be your monkey wrench, but unfortunately, there's going to be a whole bunch of them in this group, and
right.
DeMar Hamlin is probably the guy that's going to get caught up in this. Where does Cam go? Do they stick Cam with the cornerbacks? Okay, a lot of people put Cam as a corner. The thing about it is, when I go back to the returners, John, if you look at last year's returners, Shakir is back. And Shakir is back.
Right.
Out of the guys that got returns last year, that's who's back, right? We got Khalil Shakir to return. So we do need at least one more returner. Obviously, Hardy's return skills, I believe, is what led the Bills to draft him at that spot. Probably more so than his cornerback skills, if that makes sense. So, you got Kyron Brown, a third-year player. He's a journeyman. You got Takori Couch, who's a rookie from Miami. Then you got Lovely. You talked about him, the rookie from Western Michigan. That's where that's where it's going to get iffy. Right now, if I had to say we're going to pick 6 corners, I had Douglas, Benford, Johnson, Elam, of course. Then I had Ingram and Cam Lewis, with Hardy as a practice squad guy. And then my safety room was Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, Cole Bishop, and DeMar Hamlin. But if Hardy needs to stay, you can put Lewis in that safety room and move Hamlin. I think this is going to possibly be a tough decision for the Bills to make in the safety room this year. You talked about D. Delaney. He could step up and play. And here's the other point, John, nobody wants to talk about, that we've talked about in the past, is there some sort of return of Micah Hyde? He's staying in shape. He's in town. Does Micah Hyde show
I
back up?
I don't see that. I agree with you. I like your thought process, but I think they look at a Micah play as a mid-season issue if needed. We agreed on the cornerback room. Hardy to the practice squad. I like it. Rapp, Mike Edwards, Cole Bishop, DeMar Hamlin. I think that's really the conversation here. And I have D. Delaney over DeMar Hamlin. Even though the lot of talk about how well DeMar did, people are probably going to be screaming at me. He had a great OTAs. He looks really good. He's a hero. He's come back. I get all that. I love it. I just have to wonder if the lack of true exposure to the game lately, full contact game type scenarios, makes a difference in their thought process going forward.
True. And I think you brought it up earlier, John. I think the biggest question mark and the biggest thing with this defense is, what's more important to this defense? Is it having extra safeties, or is it solidifying the backup to Taron Johnson and nickel corner? Because in this defense, the nickel corner does so much. I think that's the reason why they went at Cam Lewis, all season long and got that deal done when they got it done. They did not want to lose Cam Lewis. They wanted him to be there as a guy that could be a backup in a time of needed safety, but a guy that could definitely take some pressure off of Taron Johnson if they needed to. So I think it's why when you looked at, we were at the Patriots game at home, and, the Paisan, I can't remember his name, your brother, his agent, the guy who was the agent for the Italian dude that played quarterback. I can't remember his name.
Testaverde.
It was Sean something another. Anyway, he was there. I mean, they were trying to get this Cam Lewis deal done before the end of the season. So obviously it was a point of emphasis for the Bills and for Brandon Beane. So, Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think we for
No,
for waiting.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I misspoke, right? So at 4 safeties, it's Cam Lewis and D. Delaney's looking in from the outside. So
Okay,
my math was off a little bit. I don't have Kaiir. I don't
so
have
you don't have
DeMar.
Cam Lewis as a corner.
You
Give me
know,
your corners. Give me your corners besides Douglas, Benford,
so
Johnson, and
I
Elam.
agreed with you. I agreed
Okay,
with you, right? I
okay.
agreed with you.
Well, I
No,
had
you're
Cam
right.
Lewis.
No, you're right.
I
You
had
have missed
Cam Lewis.
corner
Yeah,
because of the
yeah, I
nickel
had him
corner
on the
backup with it.
right.
Yeah. So no, my initial thought was right. I do have D. Delaney instead of DeMar Hamlin.
But I think that a thing that people need to understand about this area, this defensive back area, I do think Kaiir Elam is a guy that could possibly be moved by the end of the preseason. If things just don't seem to be getting any better, because move him now instead of having to cut him next year. Okay, does that make
Right.
sense?
And I don't disagree with that. I don't know that if he plays well in the preseason that you're looking to just market him, right? I mean, if he plays well in the preseason, then doesn't that translate to continuing to be on the roster? But I do want to come back to what you said earlier. And the most important position in the secondary, I agree with you, is that nickel corner spot. And it used to be when we played that you more or less brought in, and not everybody did this, but you could put a safety on a tight end. We don't do that anymore because tight ends are not the same guys they used to be, right? That whole position group physically and productivity wise has changed and become something completely different. So I think as you build your roster, you're always keeping into consideration if I lose a corner, then my number one nickel comes to play that corner spot. And then now I got to have somebody back into the cornerback position. And I think that's the rub here.
It's funny is we put so much emphasis on the wide receiver room this offseason, John. I mean, everybody talking about wide out. We need 2-3 guys in the draft. We need to bring a guy in. To me, the biggest question mark on this football team right now is this defense. And the other thing that's kind of shocking is just the overhaul in leadership, not only team wise, but that side of the ball. I mean, you're now looking at a leadership group of guys like Ed Oliver, Bernard.
Right.
I even look at a guy like Christian Benford, a guy that was a 7th-round pick out of Villanova that's now become a solid, reliable cornerback in this league and only getting better and better and better. You lose Poyer, you lose Micah Hyde, you lose Trey White. Von Miller, who's a guy that's supposed to be a leader on this defense, yes, is he still a leader? He's now a backup. He's in the swan song of his career. So it's not only
we'll see how that shakes out, right? Because he can
right,
rush both tackles,
right,
and he's probably the first guy off the bench to give Rousseau and Epinesa a break.
right.
But Jerry, I agree with you. I thought the defense, from the leadership perspective, from the position perspective, had much more turnover and was a much more, I guess, frail, soft rebuild situation than the wide receiver room affected the offense.
I think the word
Jerry,
I would use would be volatile.
Great comments, great roster prediction. I think you and I mostly see eye to eye. What determines the difference? Is this the first 2 weeks of training camp, the first 2 preseason games? Are guys really going to be earning their position? I think the way we looked at it, there's really only 3 or 4 that are up for grabs in our perspective. Tell the audience a little bit, and then we'll close the show out. What is it? What do guys have to do to beat that other guy out when it's about 51-49?
Well, I think the biggest thing is reliability. And there's 2 things that go with reliability with a player in the NFL. First is durability and the ability to not be injured all the time. Can they count on you to be on the field and not in the training room? The second thing is knowing what the hell you're doing. There's no other way to put it. I think the easiest way for guys like Ulafacio and Solomon and Hardy and these rookies to flash and make a name for themselves to where they're fighting truly for a roster spot and getting on that roster is that when they are on the field, their missed assignments are at a minimum. Are they going to make some mistakes? Yes. Are they going to make some technique mistakes? Yes, because it's a new experience to them. They can't do the things or all the things they did in college now in the NFL. The competition's just that much better. But if you know your playbook and you know what to do, and they can depend on you to be on the field because you're not hurt, those two things are huge. And that's going to go a long way for these guys in making this roster.
Brilliant. Jerry O, the legend. Don't forget, everybody in Bills Mafia, come to the Overreaction Sports Network Thursday nights. It's the Big O Show. Jerry, real quick, remind everybody why they need to hear you on Thursday night.
Well, you need to hear me on Thursday night because right now we're doing some different things, comparisons and stuff like that. But once we get to the season, we're going to do an in-depth look at the next upcoming week's opponent. It'll be that time by Thursday. Everybody's got the previous week's game out of their system. We're going to talk about that week's opponent, hopefully have some guests on, some other content creators or beat writers from the teams that we're going to play to come on and talk. And also I'm working on some different things where we'll have some in-depth Bills injury discussion as well. It'll be a very, very information-packed 35, 40 minutes. So hopefully you check us out.
Well, there you have it, everybody. In English this time, that's Jerry Ostrowski. You can find him on X at Ostrowski_Big O. And you have been listening to the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to tell a friend. Don't forget to hit that like button. Head on over to YouTube. You can add comments later after the show. I just got on later and told Jerry he was full of baloney from show 10 weeks ago. Thanks for showing up, everybody. We love you, Bills Mafia. We are in for an exciting season, Jerry. I start to get amped up this time of year when you can see training camp coming. Buddy, all I got to say is go Bills.
And don't forget overreactionbuffalo.com, our new website. Get all the up-to-date, up-to-the-minute, up-to-the-second Bills news. Also our content whenever you need it. So check that website out. And as always,
I hit the site. It's amazing. It's calling awesome stories from all over the internet. It's so cool. Anyway, sorry about that. Bursting in on you, Jerry. Go Bills, buddy.
Much love. Go Bills.